call this meeting back to order. Thank you. Okay. Ms. Picard?
I recommend that minutes pertaining to litigation, Robinson Green Beretta, remain sealed.
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second to recommend that the minutes pertaining to litigation, Robin Green Beretta, remain sealed. Any discussion? Those in favor? Those against? Any abstentions or recusals? That was a unanimous vote. Thank you very much.
I recommend that minutes pertaining to the matter of security, including but not limited to the deployment of security personnel or devices, approval of emergency operations plans, remain sealed.
So moved. Second.
There was a second and there was a motion and a second to recommend the minutes pertaining to the matter of the EOP or the emergency operation plans remain sealed. Any discussion? Those in favor? Those against? And any recusals of abstentions? Mr. Stahl's not present. So, thank you very much for a vote. There's Mr. Stahl. Okay. Next one.
I recommend that minutes which relate to the privacy of students and their records, approval of home instruction requests, remain sealed.
So moved. Second.
There was a motion and a second to recommend that the minutes which relate to the privacy of students and their records remain sealed. Any conversation, any discussion on this? No. Those in favor? Those against? Any recusals or abstentions? That was unanimous. Thank you very much. Ms. Giusti, disclosure of the votes, please.
Sure. We had 5 votes in executive session. The first was executive session minutes of July 13th, NEA ESP negotiation update, approved by Abbott, Chambers, Day, Giusti, Ligori, Luzon, Lyle, and Stahl, abstaining Callahan. The next vote was executive session minutes, July 13th, potential litigation, approved by Abbott, Chambers, Day, Giusti, Ligori, Luzon, Lyle, McAllister, and Stahl, abstaining Callahan. Discussion of emergency operation plans, approved by Abbott, Callahan, Chambers, Day, Giusti, Ligori, Luzon, Lyle, McAllister, and Stahl. Home instruction request from tonight, approved by Abbott, Callahan, Chambers, Day, Giusti, Ligori, Luzon, Lyle, McAllister, and Stahl. And finally, to return to open session, approved by Abbott, Callahan, Chambers, Day, Giusti, Ligori, Luzon, Lyle, McAllister, and Stahl.
Thank you, Ms. Giusti.
Recognitions. Please join me in congratulating the following students. For our Skills USA National Award winners, Mitch Daniel, silver medal, electrical; Colby Elwell, 4th place, Marine Tech; Madeline St. Peter, Lindsay O'Leary, Madison Chalfu, and Jillian Gear, 5th place, health occupations; and Mason Payne, 10th place, automotive. We also are awarding the postseason awards. High school wrestling, James Doherty, 170-pound states champion, 1st team all-state, 1st team all-division, and academic all-state. Noah Danucci placed 6th in the state championship, 106 pounds, academic all-state. Gary Gardner placed 5th in the state championship, heavyweight, 2nd team all-division. Corbin Mariah, academic all-state, and Mitchell Daniel, academic all-state. We also have Rika. We also have Rico Thompson, freshman state champion, shot put, freshman state champion, discus. And tonight we do have a special recognition of our performance of our Chariho High School theater group, who did Freaky Friday. I was at opening night. It was absolutely amazing. So I'm very thrilled to have them share with you a little sort of snippet of what they performed for Freaky Friday. I'm going to ask the school committee to step down into the front row so that they're going to come up to the stage and perform a little skit for everyone here. And Miss Vaughn, if you could come to the mic and introduce them. Yes. Okay.
It is my honor tonight to introduce to you our Chariho Performing Arts Theater Company. I also your Freaky Friday show at the night. It was phenomenal, and you had a chance to witness it. I'd like to first talk a little bit about all that our theater company has done over this past year to be able to perform. So we are one of the high schools in the state that has been able to perform 2 performances during COVID throughout every year. So even since COVID hit, we were able to do 2 performances each year. So we did Hunchback in late August, very proud of that work. That was a filmed on-stage performance. We had 25 actors in production. We also did a Lizzie Borden event. We actually did a performance at the actual location. That's pretty impressive. It's something really unique. We have 16 actors present for that. And then Freaky Friday was just this past couple of weeks ago, which was another great performance. Some of the challenges that our company had to go through, it was just really interesting hearing all the different ways
adapted with COVID. Oh, thank you. Mic's on now. Appreciate that. So they had us start out by 6 feet apart for distance with masks, and we can only have 21 actors perform. And then we were able to adjust, and we had to put 6 actors on a wait list. Then they were able to have them rejoin the cast, so a lot of adapting there. Not only that, but if you think of the chorus production that accompanies a musical, so they had to sing and dance with masks, and the chorus had to switch from humming, so they were only allowed to hum with COVID protocols, then we're able to switch to singing. I can't even sing, period, so I don't even imagine how they sung through masks, and also through Zooms, where you had the Zoom delay, so that is quite impressive as well. Just also wanted to share that a couple of days before the Freaky Friday production, they got the word that they could sing and perform without the mask, so another quick adjustment there. And then all their dance moves had to be really staged and set up in unique different ways because of COVID restrictions. Also, our pit band, we had a band performance, and they had to have adapted mouthpieces and music to go along with all their musical performances. So this crew has been through a lot, and so for them to be able to pull off 2 performances a year, I'm extremely proud of them. So can we just give them a round of applause before they... And then I'm just going to really quickly ask each member to introduce themselves so that you know who they are. Thank you.
kick us off.
Okay. I'm Maddie Long. I'm Abby Pageant.
I'm Regan Floyd. I'm Sarah Wojcik. I'm Nikita Gabra.
I'm Rachel Lindelof.
I'm Violet Main.
I'm Aiden Kelly.
I'm Lillian Boyd.
I'm Lucy Bay. I'm Morgan Long. I'm Alex Alga.
And I'm Sarah Frost.
Everyone is freaking out because Fletcher is missing. Now all the wedding guests are out searching. My grandma and grandpa are offering advice, and mom called the police. Everyone is asking me questions, and I don't know the right answers. I was ready to be grown up, just waiting for the day. And now I'm freaking. Does mommy feel this way? See, they think that I have answers. They look to me to guide. They see this old woman, but there's a little girl inside.
You are overreacting. Boys run away. I ran away all the time.
Well, feel free to run away now. Sorry. I'm not myself today. I'm in a funny way. I'm not the thing they think they see. This alpha mommy, she's not me. They want a woman I can't be, in words that I can't say. I'm not the woman I thought I was. I'm not myself today.
They're on the way out. Probably hiding around. Having time to flight.
I'm sure that you're trying for anything.
I have no idea a woman could feel so dismissed. They smile and call me sweetheart. Does Ellie feel like this? See, if only they would listen, I could get this search on track. But when they hear me talking, they just think I'm talking back. I'm not myself tonight, and more than me's not right. 'Cause kid ran away, I'd hunt him down and kill him. My God, what a thing to say. If I had a kid and the kid ran away, I would find him, I would hold him, and then I'd kill him. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not myself today. Hey, are you okay? Are you okay? I'm not okay. What a day. Even with this mess of my pants, I thought I would do better. I thought I'd go away. I mean, even as you, I'm less a person, can't get my crap together. I'm also a mess, I'd say. I'm today. I'm not myself. I'm in my way. I'm down and down. So young and smiling. I wanted to recognize one of us who's actually in the audience, so we go Tom, if you can come down. Mrs. Sandwich is going to send you your childhood pin. We wanted to recognize you. What a wonderful accomplishment. Thank you for showing up tonight. You know, we haven't been in person a lot yet, but congratulations on behalf of
Thank you, that was awesome. It was a nice, nice diversion. Thank you so much. We're now part of our meeting, which is called the Public Forum. This is a chance for the public to weigh in or share with us their thoughts. It has to be on a topic that's not on the agenda, because that would be discussed at a later time. Our goal is to try to adhere to the 30 minutes. Obviously, you know, we will try to get as many people as possible to speak. We will ask you to limit your comments to 2 minutes, and so that everyone can have a chance to speak. If there's more time at the end, we can also ask for a second comment. And we would like you to come down to the podium and speak if you're ready to have a comment for the school committee. I apologize because I see someone coming down, and thank you, sir.
Thanks for bringing the kids up. So we sometimes forget that we're here for them. Germany has a pretty dark history
Sir, what's your name, please?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's just, I need it, Donna needs it for, Ms. Siskevich needs it for the minutes.
Chris V. Charlestown.
And the town, please. Oh, Charlestown.
The Germans make a point of teaching their children about the dark part of their history because they don't want it to happen again. They cover the rise of Nazism, the causes for it, and they paint the Allies as the heroes. They make no bones about the fact that the Nazis were bad. It baffles me why people in this country are afraid of history. America's history is not squeaky clean. We're not the greatest country in the world anymore. Sorry, but we're not. And there's large parts of our history that were horrible. To deny our students access to all of history, not just the stuff we like, not just the stuff that makes us look good. They need to have all the facts at their command. And I commend the people who've been working on this for a while, because we need it. This is one of the best school systems in the state, if not the country. And I think to deny our students the right to critical thinking skills based on everything, not just the shiny parts. This is not a secret, there's a movement in this country to disassemble public education. That's a fact. And the anti-CRT folk, that's just one aspect of it. They want to eliminate public education because they don't want us talking about certain things. There are 4 states now with laws on the books that forbid teachers from using certain words in the classroom. That's Orwellian. And I don't understand how people can think that's a good thing. This isn't a political issue. It's just history with all the lumps and bumps. And that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, down front.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I love that entertainment, by the way. It was great. Nice job. My name is Jim Sullivan, and I've been a school teacher and a school committee person. I've been a school administrator for over 35 years. And one thing I know for sure, and I'm here to say it, and I hope many of you say the same thing as we go along, and that is I'm definitely against critical racism being taught in this school system. And it's not good for the students, it's detrimental, and I don't want to see it happen. So that's one of the reasons why I'm here. I also want to have you call attention, and I gave everyone on the school committee a copy of a bill. Actually, this is my letter that I sent as a concerned citizen to these state representatives, and let them know how I feel. And I hope you read it and feel the same way. But anyway, the bill is going to be before the House this early fall, and they're going to vote on it. They've already had it in March there, and they tabled it. But now it's coming before them again. And the bill actually says it prohibits the state from funding or granting monies to school systems or organizations that teach critical racism. So again, I'd like to have as many segments of this community support that bill, because if you let the congressman know how you feel, it's going to go a long way. And I believe that if parents, again, call attention to it, and the school committee supports it, and I hope that I can have a vote of confidence from school committee people and make it known to the public how you feel, and also the union, teachers union head, I think would be very helpful. So as many segments of the community.
Mr. Sullivan, could you please wrap it up, sir?
Yes.
Oh, thank you very much.
I'm about ready to finish
Thank you.
and say that God bless America. God bless the school system.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am, in the back. Okay, I see the person over to the right. Thank you. You'll be next. Yes, you'll please come to the podium.
Hi, my name is Jess Purcell. I live in Richmond and I have 2 kids that are 4 and 7. I've never personally called someone a racist, nor have I been called one. And yet I've seen evidence of racial division through my life, although I did not always have the vocabulary to name it. Despite the diverse demographic in Newport where I grew up, I noticed that housing segregation was a persistent issue. Why is that? When I was pregnant with my first child, I learned that there are significant disparities in maternal health outcomes based on race. Why is that? These are not questions that belong only to one political party or one race. I acknowledge that these instances of systemic racism make me feel uncomfortable, but I can feel that without identifying solely as the oppressed or the oppressor. As stated in the Chariho Social Studies curriculum, I see myself as a participant in a diverse, democratic society and interdependent world. I oppose attempts to censor the curriculum based on concerns that discussions of race and gender are harmful to students. Censorship is not a solution. I believe that social and cultural lessons in the context of history and the present moment are necessary. I have faith that our public school works to the benefit of the greater public, much like our local libraries and post offices. I support the continued diligent attention of the current Chariho Anti-Racism Task Force in collaboration with the school committee and superintendent. This work seeks to decrease forms of discrimination and encourages equitable access to school resources and opportunities. This is not the work of radicals. It is the work of community members informed by the needs of our district and the students it serves. I stand unwavering in my support of this district and its teachers, especially now as they begin another school year under the increased demands of a global pandemic. I appreciate the trained professionals who shoulder the responsibility of building bridges between our children and the future. We should not place barriers on their work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Goldie Williams from Richmond. I'm here to talk against indoctrination in the CRT in the Chariho School District and mental health. The diversity is fine, but when you say white privilege causes mental health, I have a problem. You're indoctrinating the kids in this school district like they do in China and in Russia. My father escaped under a train so they wouldn't be any communists or Marxists or anything. It's a former Soviet. He's not alive. He wrote a book, and this is what he escaped from. My son lived in hell when he was in Chariho. He graduated in 2017 out of the RISE program, now CALA. CALA shouldn't exist because the kids who bullied him are still there, and they bring drugs, fentanyl and heroin into the middle and high school, and they bully the kids in the CALA program plus the middle school kids. I got this from students. He was even bullied by the director, Mrs. Garlick, to graduate at age 18 when he wasn't ready. He flunked out of CCRI the first time because he wasn't ready to go to college because they never transitioned him to work or college. Now he's going the second time around. He's taken it online and he made the dean's list. He's working now at Shaw's as a bagger and a cart person, but not for long. After he graduates, he wants to do computer networking and IT. But we had to spend tens of thousands to get him there. And Chariho, if it wasn't for one teacher telling me he was going for a nervous breakdown in the junior year, I wouldn't have known about that, but I knew he was going downhill mentally. He went into the CAD program for 30 days.
Ma'am, could you wrap it up, please?
What?
It's 2 minutes. Wrap it up, please.
Oh, I'm going to.
Thank you.
He went into the CAD program, best program. He went into RISE, downhill, and they would not let him out of RISE, even if he wanted to. Mr. Ritchie would not let him out. In conclusion, I am against CRT. That CALA program should be closed up because of the kids who belong at the ACI and the juvenile hall. Thank you.
Thank you. Down in front, please. And then the person in the back. Thank you. I'm sorry, just the lights are hard to see, so. Thanks.
I thought that when I looked at them, oh, they're going to have a headache by the end of the night. My name is Polly Hopkins. I'm from Hopkinton, right here. I'm going to read a letter that a parent had written instead of my own personal comments. So I think this encompasses a lot of us in the community. So it's a little harsh. In previous meetings, I have restrained myself. I and others have respectfully presented researched information opposing your plans. On a national level, we have heard from people of all ages and races decry DEI, CRT, and CRP as discriminatory, divisive, dishonest methods and rhetoric that uses children in a socio-political war. Even the supporters have admitted that their goal is active discrimination and segregation. It doesn't matter how many times you change the name or move the goalpost, it's still the same ideology. Despite all this, you refuse to listen, and your rebuttals are simply emotional regurgitation of mainstream media talking points with no proof or fact to support your decisions. Ms. Picard claims that the Chariho Regional School District is focused on communication, transparency, and equity. However, I do not see any intention or proof of those first two. You have forced me to come to the conclusion that regarding CRT, either you're stupid or you're lying. In either case, people who are incapable of seeing both sides, who choose to remain willfully ignorant or are intentionally dishonest, do not belong on this committee, and you should tender your resignation effective immediately. Numerous courts have ruled that this First Amendment does not mean I am required to be nice. You can't prohibit speech because it disparages or offends, and important topics require robust, uncomfortable, and sometimes heated discussion. So once again, we are discussing policy being developed that will introduce CRT methodology or dogma. This time, it's the Vision 2023 District Strategic Plan.
Ms. Hopkins, are you almost wrapping up?
Which lists among its goals to revise required reading lists to increase cultural competency and to offer among its goals to coursework that is culturally affirming. I'm not a teacher, but I question the educational effectiveness of these goals. The use of ambiguous statements like cultural proficiency or cultural competency are proof that even as far back as 2018, when Vision 2023 was developed, the intention was to bend this district's curriculum to suit a political agenda. There's more.
Thank you very much.
I'll email it to you.
I have some, excuse me, sir, I have somebody that I acknowledged first. No, sir, I said if there was time at the end, that probably happens. Excuse me, out of order. Sorry.
My name is Lauren Cashel. I'm from Richmond. I'd like to talk about critical thinking instead of critical race thinking. Critical thinking is allowing people to get the education, that's what we're doing, and use it to make up their own decisions. We have kids in the audience, we have students in the audience. I work as a behavioral tech in a school. We are teaching kids by dividing us is affecting everyone's mental health. We should be focusing on what is most important, and that is the well-being and safety. If these parents out here are talking about critical race theory, what do you think it's projecting onto our students? Like I said, we should be worried about other things that are going on in our community, the rising case numbers. We need to worry about that more than this issue. Without worrying about that, we are defeating ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Etta Zasloff, retired teacher from Chariho. I'm from Hopkinton. And I just want to start by saying that I am so proud to be living in America. And I see it as a country that aspires to provide all men certain unalienable rights, specifically to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But I'm also extremely shamed and concerned by the fact that 245 years later, we still cannot live up to those ideals. And one of the ways that we can do this is by teaching history correctly and owning what's happening in the world today. This is not something that the education system is devising to divide us. It is the movement that has brought all this to the surface is something that is meant to distract. I agree with Chris B. that there is a concerted effort to undermine public education. I retired with 44 years in public ed and am committed to educating our population. That's the only way we can hold on to democracy. So there are many ways that we can do this without shaming. That seems to be one of the biggest criticisms of teaching honest history, is that it's going to shame white Americans. And I'm sure that Germans felt shamed or feel shamed when they hear their history. And we're going to feel some of that, and we should. And shame has its place in some things. It doesn't mean that we're not a good country. It doesn't mean that we can't aspire to do better. So I'm just here to support the school committee in looking at the curriculum honestly and not caving into this distraction that we keep hearing, the letters to the editor, the testimony that just goes on, this exact same rhetoric that we're hearing from everybody. I hope that you will listen to something different. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Courtney Morrison, Richmond. I am the mother of a kindergartner going into Richmond Elementary and a 6th grader at the middle school. I am here this evening to support the process of identifying the policies, practices, and conditions that allow racial inequality to persist through education. I understand that many people would like to just choose to ignore the existence of racial inequalities and hope that it will go away. That has not worked for this country at all so far. So to make argument that a change is needed is at the very least a reasonable notion. I would like to note that I truly believe that the majority of those opposed to CRT have grossly mischaracterized it and do not really grasp what it is about. If they did, then there would be no need to speak out against it. Unless, of course, they truly have the goal of seeking to perpetuate the practice of framing acts of violence and oppression against people of color as benevolent or justified mistakes that were corrected a long time ago. It is my understanding that at this time, CRT is not part of the curriculum at Chariho School District. So as to why this topic is even taking up so much of the valued school board's time is strange to me. But if CRT or any form of inclusive history ever be implemented in our school district, I will stand a continued supporter. I strongly believe that education for all children should never be limited to what some white people are willing to admit to themselves. As American historian Arthur M. Schlesinger Jr. said, honest history is the weapon of freedom. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ryan Burgum. I'm a dean of students at the high school. I taught in the history department for 14 years before becoming a dean. I just want to piggyback on some of the things the lady said right before me. I am completely blown away that this is taking up so much time when it comes to these meetings. And I question if people really know what's happening in the classroom. I mean, where's the faith in the educators? The history department, one of the things that we teach first and foremost is how to identify bias. And all that I'm seeing for these meetings is bias, one way or another. We want to teach kids critical thinking skills so when information comes across to them from whatever media source or instructor, parent, religious leader, that they will be able to digest that information in the context of their own upbringing and education and make informed decisions as informed, educated students. And for really anybody to believe that any staff member would allow another staff member to be teaching history with a bias or slant when that's actually what we're trying to not do, I really think is misinformed and really needs to know in a greater context of what we're trying to do with these children. We're creating informed, educated students that can identify bias and make their own decision. Our country is neck deep in bias right now. And it's really unfortunate, but it's one of those things that we're founded on, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, even though that's really a joke when you figure out who pays for all of the press. I hear you back there, Chris. Love you too. Have some faith in the educators that we would not allow that to happen in our classrooms. Thank you.
Thank you. This will be the last comment. 30 minutes are almost up.
My name is Leslie Straffolino. I'm from Charlestown. And I would like to just reiterate that we should also have some faith in our children, that if we give them all the information, they can process it and come to opinions of their own. The next generation, as I'm sure all you educators know, is way smarter than us.
Thank you all for your comments. We'll move on to the next agenda items. Miss Juicy, do you have your hand raised?
Chair, I make a motion to move business item A ahead of the policy discussion.
Oh. Second. Okay, so there was a motion by Ms. Juicy to move Business Policy A, Mental Health Awareness Club, before the policy section. And there was a second by Mr. Luzon. Any conversation or discussion? I'll take it to a vote. Those in favor? Okay, and those opposed? Abstaining? Recusals? Okay, did you get, Donna, did you get that? Thank you. Okay. You want to introduce?
Yes, I'm actually going to call up Ms. Spas and Emma Eldricken for the Mental Health Awareness Club presentation. This item was tabled at our last meeting, and both Principal Spas and Emma Eldricken will present an update, and I do recommend approval of the Mental Health Awareness Club.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the Mental Health Awareness Club as a approval of a club in the high school. I guess we should wait for the presentation first, and then we'll have a discussion, if that's okay with everyone. Okay, thank you. For us, we're not going to, there will be a presentation, so I don't know.
Okay, hi everyone, thank you for having us back. As you know, at the last school committee meeting, Emma and myself presented on our Mental Health Awareness Club proposal. So I just wanted to remind everyone why we're here today. Our main focus is to shine light on us putting forward a Mental Health Awareness Club. As a reminder, Emma brought this proposal to me back in April of this past year, and acknowledging mental health as an important topic for our students, and she wanted to promote some awareness around this and to offer students an opportunity to have this club. So we were asked to come back and to revisit this club in front of the school committee. So that's why we're here today. Before I get into the presentation, I just wanted to take a quick moment to acknowledge Emma and her amazing presentation that she put forward before us last school committee meeting. I thought she did such a nice job putting this together. I just wanted to take a moment for us to all recognize the work that she did in her presentation. All right, now we're going to get down to some facts here. So Emma had presented this data to you at the last meeting. According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, 1 in 5 children and adolescents experience a mental health problem during their school years. So this is a quote from the National Association of School Psychologists. If you go to any psychological association or even the National Institute on Health, they'll recognize this number, 1 in 5. That's a well-known number. So let's just take a second to think about that. 1 in 5, that's 20%. If we look at our high school, which is the size of roughly 1,100 students depending on the year, that's about 220 students who may face a mental health challenge. That's important for us to know, 20% of our population. We know that this year has been a challenge, and looking at some of our internal school data, we had over 60 students who were referred for clinical support due to a self-harm risk assessment or threat to themselves or others. That's pretty significant when you have 60 students that present with such a pressing need. So that's why we're here today. Mental health. I just want everyone to remember that's our focus of this presentation, is mental health awareness. Emma's going to give us a little reminder of some of the reasons why we're here.
So this is just a reminder of kind of what we went over last meeting. The reason for this mental health club is to encourage others to advocate for destigmatizing mental health. We want to provide a safe place for students who want more information on how to take care of their own mental health, as well as be a part of a community that's based on acceptance and empowerment and uplifting to those who may be struggling. We want to expose students and staff to the importance of mental health, as well as provide students with the resources so if they are struggling, they can get outside help. And overall, we just want to promote awareness around mental health in total.
Thank you, Emma. This is another quote from the National Institute of Health. Like other chronic diseases, mental illnesses arise from the interplay of genes, our environment, and many other factors. There's different models of mental health. One of the most accepted and one of the models that we're hearing a lot of is the biopsychosocial model of mental health, which recognizes that mental health stems from our biology, for example, our genes, our neurochemistry, but also psychological, our coping skills, our emotional well-being, our ability to handle stressors, and then also social factors, so environmental structures and social factors that come into play. And this is the biopsychosocial model of health. You may also see this,
I'm sorry. Yes.
You may also see this transfer into healthcare as well, where some medical practices incorporate this type of model.
Excuse me just for an interruption. Mr. Day.
Chair, my understanding was that we did not have a problem with this program. The problem we had was with the affiliation of the group. So
Yep, we're gonna get to that part, definitely.
I was hoping that we would get a better understanding of the group that Mr. Stahl and myself had some issues with when we did a little research.
Yep, we're gonna get there because we just wanted to again paint the picture of why we're here. It's about the mental health awareness. We're almost there, and we're gonna get to exactly that part for you. We'll skip over that one, okay? All right, so we wanted to share this with you as well. Again, a reminder of why we're doing this. Mentally healthy children are more successful in school and life. Good mental health is critical to children's success in school and their overall life, okay? Research demonstrates that our students who receive social, emotional, and mental and behavioral health support achieve better academically.
So the World Health Organization talks about how mental health is more than the absence of mental disorders. Mental health is an integral part of health, which means there's no health without mental health. You can't just have physical health and no mental health. Mental health is determined by a range of socioeconomic, biological, and environmental factors. Mental health also as a promotion involves actions that improve psychological well-being, and this may involve creating an environment that supports mental health.
So this is the part, Mr. Day, that we're gonna get to here, so go ahead.
So last meeting, we presented a program that we were going to vet under. However, we kind of reconsidered that, and this is a different proposal that we're offering. We'll get to the other vetting idea as well. So for the year one proposal, the whole concept is to develop a mission and vision statements. We want to conduct research and explore potential programs as well, so not just limiting to that one program. We want to work alongside mental health clinicians in resource review and development, and the students, as us, we want to do the initial work of the program and the resource vetting, and develop a plan for the club promotion over the years.
So what Emma's looking at here is pretty much a 3-year plan with a lot of the work being done in year one around creating their own vision and mission associated with their club and doing that work of researching different programs. That's year one. Year two, we would see implementation of that, and as well as our mission coming to play. And then year three, we would implement and then assess. Any good program we want to assess after a few years to make sure it's still in the best interest and that the resources we're using are still relevant. And that's the work that Emma and the students want to do, is to really explore what is their mission, what is the vision, develop that, and come up with what resources best meet their needs. And the question is there a resource? So do we want to use a program? Maybe the students come up with the idea we don't want a program, that we have mental health clinicians already that we want to use. Here as a list of programs.
So for the potential programs that we did some research on, we have the National Alliance on Mental Illness, Mental Health First Aid, Bring Change to Mind, Active Minds, Reach Out, Time to Change, Headstrong, and then also consider experts in the field. So do we want to vet under a program, or do we want this to be our own program where we bring experts in during the meetings? I would like to say that you can do your research on all these programs. You are going to find stuff about gender and race, but you can't talk about mental health without incorporating those two as well, because they do play a big factor into mental health, and not talking about mental health only increases the stigma around it and the issue around it as well.
So Emma presents before you some potential programs that she and her colleagues will look into. I know Mental Health First Aid was brought up at the last school committee meeting. That was a program that, when I was assistant director of special education, we brought that program forward and trained a lot of our administrators, our teachers, and our faculty, our secretaries. We did a lot of training around mental health first aid. There's also a youth component that we would like to explore and to see if that's a good fit. So we thank you for that recommendation, Mr. Day. So we are definitely, it's the job to look through these and to see what's the best fit. And like Emma said, maybe it is a program, maybe not. Maybe we tap into our school psychologists and our school social workers who are who can provide this type of support. But that's going to be the work in year one. And also the main point is what best meets our needs and our mission. What best meets the needs of the students in our building. I know for time purposes, I'm not going to go through all this, but I did want to bring your awareness on the focus by the American Psychological Association of COVID-19 and its repercussions. So mental health was already having a spotlight. There's articles coming out showing us that with the pandemic, there's even more of a need for a focus. And this is a quote from the APA. If you look at the prevalence of kids who have school adjustment difficulties and mental health problems, it was too high before the pandemic, and it's going to be higher now. Pre-2020, there was already evidence that mental health problems in young people were on the rise. The 12-month prevalence of major depressive disorder in U.S. adolescents increased from 8.7, that was in 2005, to now 11.3. That's a significant growth in 2014. Suicide rates also increased among people ages 10 to 24. That's our population. That's our high school students. In light of such trends, more than half of U.S. states have passed laws or enacted policies requiring schools to have mental health curriculum or include mental health in their health or education standards. We're seeing increased awareness of the value of bringing mental health into schools, which is step one. And that's what we're here for. We'd like to put forward a mental health club for our students to promote awareness around this important topic.
So I just want to leave off with one reminder. Our school, the motto is pretty much all kids all the time. So if we really are about all kids, then I would really take in consideration bringing in this mental health awareness for the safety of the kids and their mental state as well.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second, so now we're open for discussion and questions. I know it's hard because I don't know who went first, but can I just start at the end and work my way?
Okay.
So we'll start with Mr. Ligori and then Catherine.
Emma, thanks. Thanks so much for revisiting this and for your advocacy for this. I want to make a few suggestions. One, don't, of course, limit yourself to that list you showed us. There's many, many resources out there. I think mental health services are a critical need. And now that you have a partner in Mrs. Spas and Superintendent Picard, I would suggest you start working on them on increasing the resources within the Chariho schools for professional mental health services. I think what you're doing is really outstanding, but that's a lot of responsibility being put on the backs of students. And I encourage you to continue on with your efforts, but work with your leadership to see if we can all work together as a community to increase the resources of professional work. So thank you very much.
Ms. Juicy?
Hi, very good job. That was very impressive. 2 times you've had to come up here and present to us, so we appreciate it. Do you have an advisor picked for this club yet? And also, just to reiterate, this is a voluntarily joined club. This is not something that is going to be presented in classrooms. It's not something that every child is going to be required to be a part of. It's a club that you can join after school like other clubs. And do you have an advisor?
So yes, it's voluntarily. No one has to do this. It's completely if you'd like to. For the club advisors, we have Dr. O, as well as Ms. LaFleur and Ms. Castor.
Excellent. Thank you.
And Dr. O is a licensed, she's a certified school psychologist, and Megan Laporte is a school social worker.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Stahl, please.
I appreciate Emma coming back to present on this again. I continue to be disappointed, however, in the oversight. The issue last time was that we had a presentation ahead of time, and I had time to look at the presentation and look at the websites, and I had to dig several layers in to find things that I found were really objectionable content. So the approach, and I'm allowed to think it's objectionable content. The approach tonight was to not provide a presentation ahead of time and to have a presentation very quickly and very hard to see.
so that I don't really know what we're asking for. My other issue is that doesn't build trust for me in the process. I think that mental health awareness is incredibly important, and I agree with you on that, absolutely. I think to say that you understood that we didn't like the program and the affiliation that was presented last time, and to suggest then that, well, we're not necessarily going to use that program, or maybe we will, or maybe something very similar. It's an unknown. I would have felt much better if you'd brought an alternative that was a more agreeable alternative rather than an unknown. The last point that I make is that, you know, the people we've mentioned, the school psychologists and social workers, are people that we have here in the district on staff and on hand for these reasons. I think we're providing these services in a lot of ways. And I think we need to continue to provide those services and even see if we need to increase those services under the circumstances. But the after-school club to me is still, I think, a little bit dangerous to tackle this mental health awareness. And with unknown curriculum and an unknown direction. I know I shouldn't use the word curriculum because it's not educational materials. It's something we're providing as a school district, however. So I'm as uncomfortable with it as I was last month.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Abbott?
Yes. Have you formed a liaison with the South Shore Mental Health Clinic in Charleston?
We have not formed any liaisons with local
Would you
South
plan on
South
doing
Shore
it?
Mental Health. Is that?
Yes.
That could be, again, that's part of that year one. You know, I would say that year one work is to explore if there are good partners and how to tap into our local experts.
So I'm all in favor of using existing resources in the community. I think that would be a good area for you to explore.
And like Mr. Saul said, we also recognize that we have valuable mental health providers within our schools. And we already have them connected to the club, so that could absolutely be something that, and that's what
So
we
you
present.
will be exploring?
What's that?
You will be exploring a liaison with South Shore?
We can, I'm not saying that one specifically, but I'm saying that that's the work of year one is what Emma has proposed, that the students do that work in terms of exploring what's out there in terms of resources to support the mental health awareness.
So you'll
club.
be looking into it?
We can look into it, yeah. We will be looking into local resources, and if that's a recommendation, South Shore, we'd have to explore and look into that to see if it's a good fit.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Day?
As I said last meeting, being in the emergency services, I know how desperate we need something like this. I will trust you as a principal of the school to do what's right, and I'll support it, but I have the similar concerns that Mr. Saul had, that it would have been nice to see this in black and white in front of us instead of try to follow this. What I probably should have did is got out there in the audience so I could have followed this along. And as George alluded to, you know,
I apologize, I thought you'd be able to see the screen. Sorry about that.
I would like to have heard you say that we will investigate all possibilities to make this program work right, but I will trust you as the administrator of this building to carry this out in a professional manner. But I have questions as to presentation here and you know, whether you're going to involve South Shore. And, you know, I have a scanner. I pick up all of the chatter between Ashway, Hope Valley, Caroline, and Wesley as far as the individuals that they're taking, and they're not taking 45 and 50-year-olds to a lot of these places. So I know there's a need, but to not incorporate the people in the Chariho and Wesley district that are dealing with this, because some of these kids that are being dealt with in Wesley are Chariho students, I'm sure. So I would hope that you reach out to all the local organizations and see what they offer, what services they can offer to make this thing work.
Thank you. Mr. Luzon, you had your hand up.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Emma, fantastic. Right? Fantastic. You know, some of us are reading more into this than what is really there. It's just an awareness club. Okay? And if we can teach the 80% to have compassion for that 20%, and the 80% just to listen to that 20%, then you've succeeded. Clubs come and go. It's what you make of it. So you know what? You've got my vote.
Mr. Stoll?
Just a note to the principal and to anyone else bringing presentations to the committee. When we get a presentation ahead of time, I read it and I study it. If I don't get a presentation ahead of time, it's generally getting a no vote because I don't have time to vet it.
Thank you, Mr. Stoll. If we approve this, Emma, if the committee approves it, would you agree to come back in a year and share your work and where you are, like after your first year?
Yeah, after a year, after we kind of try and figure out what we want to do, we would come back and share what we find with you guys.
Thank you. Mr. Callahan?
Thank you, Chair. I think that's a great idea since there's not a lot of content. It looks like you're doing a lot of searching for, the vision and how it's going to be best suited for Chariho. So I'm looking forward to seeing you in a year and hearing what progress you made. I thank you for bringing this to us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes. Excuse me, you need to, yes, because you have to be on the audio part of it. Thank you.
I think she's doing a great job, but I also think you guys are missing an opportunity here to blossom something in this school. She could work directly with the professionals we have on staff for some credit. You could grow a program here where these kids could go off and follow this career path. You don't have this at Chariho. And obviously it's in great need now. She seems like she really is interested in helping. I think maybe she should be rewarded with a little credit towards her schooling or something of that nature if she's going to establish this. But just in my opinion, I think it should be done with the professionals in the school too. So maybe we can establish a foundation of that within the school and maybe get more kids to join it, kind of like they do in the tech school. So you could utilize more of the professionals' experience within the school and the other kids that you work with. That was just my thought.
Thank you, Ms. Hopkins.
Okay, you just did a really great job pitching our independent study where students earn credits for following a passion that they're really passionate about. So thank you for plugging independent study for any student who's interested in earning credits of a passion they're interested in.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Boss. There's been a motion and a second to approve the Mental Health Awareness Club. If there's not any other discussion, I'll ask for a vote. Those in favor of approving the club? Those against? Mr. Stoll? Any recusals or, what's the other one? Abstentions, sorry. Okay, the motion passes. Thank you very much. Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Ms. Paz. Back to policy.
I don't know why that's not there.
I recommend approval of the revisions to the attendance policy as submitted.
So moved. Second.
There's been a motion and a second to approve the revision to the attendance policy. Any discussion or questions with regards to this policy? I don't see any, so I will take that to a vote. Those in favor of approving the policy? Thank you. Anyone, any against? Abstentions or recusals? And that was unanimous, Donna. Thank you. B?
The attendance policy amendment, I'm asking for a deletion. I recommend the deletion of the amendment which was put in place during the COVID pandemic, and we have now addressed it in our original attendance policy based on the revision you just approved.
So, second.
Okay, there was a motion and a second to delete the current attendance policy amendment because it was put in place because of COVID, but not needed anymore somewhere else. So those are any discussion or questions? No. Those in favor? Okay. Any against? Abstentions or recusals? It was done. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Bus behavior code. I recommend approval of revisions to the bus behavior code.
So, second.
There's been a motion and a second to approve the revisions to the bus behavior code. Any questions? Mr. Stahl?
Sorry, I was just getting to the code, the policy, so I can give you the paragraph. So, a couple of things. One, we have through the bus behavior code revision also later on in the rest of the student behavior codes. Looking at the policies this time, I realized that we have the Saturday community service days or Saturday extended school day time. My request with that is simply that, it says if you miss the Saturday time, that, there's time to do during the next school week or the next school day or something like that, or schedule for another Saturday. It mentions that the only option to miss is medical, with notification from a doctor that you couldn't be there for that time. So I'm simply asking out of respect for Sabbatarians among us, whether that be Jewish or Protestant Sabbath keepers, that Saturday is a worship day, that we allow or make an exemption there. So I would prefer if we had nothing on Saturdays, but understanding that it may work well for some folks in the system, at least everywhere from bus behavior code through the rest of the behavior codes, wherever we have the Saturday extra school day or community service day, that we would allow an exemption from Saturdays for religious observance. So it comes up first in the bus behavior code, but I'll mention it when we get to the others as well, if need be. It's in section C, I believe, here on the bus behavior code. Let me find the letter C and page number. If someone else finds it first, let me know.
Okay, the first page, or just said notification.
See on page 3. So pretty much every section where it has the decimal. Page 3, page 4.
We can add that, Mr. Stahl, so we want to say you could try that.
Yeah, I'd like to see that revision. Just the addition of a religious exemption.
My second question on the bus code is, I have listed number 9. It's under the discipline. So this is on page 4. Under discipline, and we have the class 3 discipline items, number 9. As a class 3 offense, we have making racial slurs or other bias-based infractions. See Chariho policy for definitions. So the definitions under the Chariho policy covers the bias-based infractions definition. Doesn't define racial slurs, but I think that part is pretty straightforward. And I think it's good that we have making racial slurs as a class 3 offense here for discipline. The wording I'm concerned with is other bias-based infractions. The Chariho definitions under the Chariho discipline policy says bias-based infractions are motivated by prejudice and occur when an individual or group of individuals are targeted because of their membership or perceived membership in a certain group. This includes infractions based on hate. The difficulty I have with that is I have no idea what it means, and I have no idea how to enforce it or who decides if something is a bias-based infraction. We had a community member speaking on bias and how we're educating for students to not have bias. and how we need to not be biased, but his bias was that the only people without bias are educators, and that educators are exclusively not biased. So there's bias everywhere. So I don't know how we define that, how we interpret it, how we enforce it. Somebody could decide that anyone else's speech was bias-based. If a discussion happens about religion or politics or yoga in gym class, whatever the conversation might be that would end up having people on different sides or in different camps, someone may make a statement and someone decides that it's bias-based. So I have a problem with that phrase and that word. I'd love to see it changed. I'd love to hear what other people could say or give input about this bias-based infractions term. If we can change it to something, then it would work for me and it would make sense. I think the racial slurs is the intent there, that we want to make sure that there's not hate speech in terms of racial slurs and that kind of thing. So it's just this bias-based infractions that I have issue with, and I'd love an alternative to it, or a correction, or a change, something that's more understood or enforceable.
Donna?
Yeah, as far as Saturday observation of religious holidays, when we talk about community service, I mean, my children had to do community service a lot for their various requirements in school and honor societies and all that. And I do believe that someone can creatively incorporate a community service into a Saturday if that's the day that they religiously worship. I think that they can do it on a Saturday or a Sunday and incorporate it within their worship within the church. Okay, so I don't see where a Saturday is a problem. I think that the student could, if he needs to be disciplined or she needs to be disciplined, can say, okay, I'm going to do my community service by babysitting at the church in the nursery that we have, or helping the minister, or whatever. I think that can be incorporated. And as far as bias is concerned and the terminology of what you're asking, I think that was pretty clear to me when I read it. I know bias when I hear it or see it, and I think that others who are going to discipline or provide the discipline will know when they hear the circumstances of what the comments were, whether that was bias or not. So I don't understand your objections to this wording in this. So with all due respect, thank you.
Mr. Callahan?
Thanks, Chair. So, I'm fine with the religious exemption, definitely. But with respect to the bias-based infractions, it is vague and it's a little bit interpretive, but it's intended also to give the bus driver an opportunity to report to the principal so that the principal can dig into and explore whether or not something actually occurred. So if we need to refine the wording or something like that, I just don't think you're ever going to be able to document it to the nth degree so that every bias is listed out. I think there's some interpretation there. So I'm fine with the language as it is. I'm fine with the policy as it is. It puts the discipline in the hands of the principals. It puts due process into our process. If there is some problem with the recommended discipline from the principal, there is an appeal process that ultimately comes to us and RIDE and so on. So I'm fine with it as it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Justine? Oh, I'm sorry, did I miss someone?
No, that was a thumbs up there.
Okay.
This is a hard format.
I know it is, it's hard to see.
So I would like to make a motion to amend the policy in, I guess it's number B, right? It's a Roman numeral, B. So I'm making a motion to amend the policy. Number B, general information. Failure to serve a Saturday community service or detention with a medical or religious excuse will result in an assignment of 1 extended school day.
Okay. Well, we have a motion,
Second.
and there's a second on the floor to amend the policy to include the religious exemption into the bus policy for the Saturday. That was Ryan. Yes, Ryan made the second. Any further discussion on this matter? On this motion? No?
I'm sorry, Chair, what?
Is there you want any more questions or further discussion on the new motion?
On the amendment.
The amendment? Yeah. Yes.
So if a student is able to waive it due to religious concerns or mental, when do they do their time?
Yeah, I would think that they could have there would be an alternate assignment.
Okay, I'm just asking.
There's no more discussion or questions. I'd like to take the amendment to the motion to a vote. Those in favor to approve the policy as amended? Thank you. Those against? Any abstentions or recusals? No. Looks like that was unanimous, Donna. Thank you.
The next policy is the face mask.
I'm sorry.
Point of order.
Look at the primary motion.
Yeah, we gotta know.
Keys, like real keys?
Yeah, like a set of keys.
No.
The gentleman lost his keys and he was the one that had the paper.
Oh, Mr. Sullivan.
So sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. That's important.
The microphone.
So I had a point of order here. No, about what I did.
Did we vote on the first one?
Not yet. Now
So take a vote. I'll take a vote. Thank you. Okay, so, thank you. Thank you, Craig. God, there's a lot going on. Okay. What did I say? Just a moment. Oh.
He was right there.
Must be
So we're voting on the new bus behavior code. Okay.
Catherine's in it.
Yes. It's too bad. Should we find it? Do we want to take 3 minutes to look for the keys?
They got them? No. I don't think so.
He didn't set him in the podium, did he?
They just checked the.
Yeah, he came up here.
All right.
He went out in the corridor.
Sorry, okay. So we need to go back to the original motion and the original, to approve bus behavior code C with the amended parts to it, amended. Thank you. So those in favor?
What are we voting on?
Those opposed?
Bus behavior.
Any recusals or abstentions? No. Okay, thank you. Thanks for that reminder. Now we're on to D.
So the next item is the policy for face masks and face coverings. Donna, did we hand you a revision? There was inadvertently a TV on page 2 after a sentence, so we removed that, and the revision you received, that was the only revision.
So you're recommending?
I'm recommending approval of the policy for face masks and face covering revision.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second to approve the policy for face masks and face coverings revision. Discussion, questions? Anybody from the school committee first? Anybody have?
Chair?
Yes, I know, I was making sure there wasn't any school committee members. Okay, sir, whoever wants to come down, please come to the podium and state your name and where you're from. Thank you. I think I'm gonna wear sunglasses.
My name is Taylor Rabbit. I'm from Ashaway. Hi, Mr. Clark. I'm just curious what the mask guidance is going to be. What's the ruling on that? And if mask exemptions will be honored this year, as our child's mask exemption from his doctor was not honored last year. That's all.
Okay, thank you, sir. Do you want to answer that? Yeah.
So the updates to the mask policy, there's a revision in May, so the new update revises the CDC language, which says strongly recommends that people, regardless of vaccination status, wear cloth face coverings indoors in public settings when around people outside of their household. A change is required to strongly recommended to be worn indoors regardless of vaccination status. But to be clear, in the first paragraph, in May, the school committee approved the last sentence, which was, as guidance is updated, the district reserves the right to implement and update mask guidance as necessary. And then to your question around the mask exemption, which goes through our special education office with Ms. Durkin, she reviews all those with her team, and then if typically, I don't want to speak for her, but they're reviewed, and then based on if we can make accommodations, and then she would coordinate with you and work on the accommodations with your child and their providers. And then obviously the other, there's removal of any terminology regarding previous things around distance learning, as well as there is a mask mandate still for the busing and public transportation per federal order. So that's clarified, as well as the exigent circumstances clause, which was created by legal counsel and for the Rhode Island Association of School Superintendents, and reviewed by our legal counsel, who's also a part of that law firm, which basically explains to our families that, and a circumstance regarding like executive orders from the governor, changes in the district, state, region, that there could be updates and amended as necessary.
Thank you, that was a good overview. School committee members, any questions?
Linda?
Okay, sure, Mr. Stahl, you sure?
Yes.
Okay, please, come on, state your name and where you're from, and then Mr. Stahl.
Good evening, members of the Chariho School Committee. My name is Louise Dinsmore. I live in Richmond, Rhode Island. I have a son going into the 4th grade of Richmond Elementary School. First, I want to thank each and every one of you as elected officials, elected by we the people of our community, to ensure that our kids receive a solid education. So thank you for that. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your leadership. I'm here tonight to speak out in favor of a policy being instituted by this school committee, not a policy instituted by the Rhode Island Department of Health, not a policy instituted by the Rhode Island Department of Education, not by the CDC, not by Governor McKee, not by the local superintendent, not by the Chariho teachers, but by you, who are representatives of we the people, of a parent's choice mask mandate pertaining to the 21-22 school year. I feel very strongly that you should make this decision about masks based on the local data. For example, when you look at the data provided by the Rhode Island Department of Health on their website, which I could find today, which was cited from September 14th of last year to May 29th, 2021, relative to the numbers of COVID cases broken down by school, broken down by students, and then by staff, the Chariho elementary schools had very low incidences of COVID cases last year. Specifically, Richmond Elementary School, with a student population of approximately 387 students, had between 10 and 14 students test positive for COVID. When you look at that, that's a 3.62 infection rate if you say that the high end of students, which was 14 students, were infected. According to the data, there were under 5 cases reported for staff for the entire year at Richmond Elementary School. When you look at Hope Valley Elementary, the incidence of COVID positive cases, there was about 6.45% infection rate for students, and Chariho Elementary had an 8.12% infection rate for students. This mask issue should be a local decision. I feel very strongly that this is a local decision. You are elected by local voters. I think it's your obligation as members of the school committee to represent we the people locally. Quite frankly, and I'm sorry if this sounds selfish, I don't care what's going on in Providence, Woonsocket, Lincoln, Cumberland. It's the local metrics that I think that we need to be concerned about. Finally, I would like to know, what are your metrics by which you will examine to make this decision about masks in school? What is the local data? And are you going to be reviewing the local data when making your decision? So what are the metrics going to be about masks and masks in school this year? What's the level of the COVID infection rate locally that's your threshold by which you will institute that all kids wear masks? Is it the COVID infection rate by town, by school, by numbers of students, or all of the above? It would be helpful to know what those metrics are when you're evaluating this decision. Please don't keep moving the goalposts. Let us know what the metrics are and be transparent about it. Again, thank you so much for your time tonight and for listening. Now, my son Giovanni wanted to say something. He's right here. He's a little gun shy. And I was just wondering if I could read his statement to you. It's under 2 minutes. Is that okay?
That's fine. 2 minutes.
Hello, members of the Chariho School Committee. My name is Giovanni Dinsmore, and I'm going to be a 4th grader at Richmond Elementary School. I'm so grateful to all of my teachers this past year for their dedication and for working so hard to give my classmates and myself an in-person learning experience. I'll tell you what I loved about last year, and I'll tell you what I didn't like so much about last year. I loved learning how to play the recorder and going to the library in school. I didn't really like learning division and wearing masks. I didn't like to wear a mask because it was hard to breathe. Yes, they would give us mask breaks, but then, we didn't get a lot of them during the day. The mask was really itchy on my face. My glasses would get foggy, and I would have to adjust my mask every few minutes because there was so much fog on them. I would easily get distracted from my work because I had to adjust my mask what seemed to be like 100 times a day. I missed seeing the faces of my friends and my teachers. I didn't know if they were happy, having a good day, or sad and having a not so good day. I think you're meeting tonight to decide whether or not kids should have to wear masks in school this year. I know we all have to be safe because of COVID-19, but what is the solution? Maybe you would think about having all the kids who didn't want to wear a mask sit near one another in their classroom, and the kids who did want to wear a mask sit near each other in their classroom, to have perhaps some separation. Thank you for listening, and have a good night. Thank you.
So I'm happy to talk about the metrics that we've been talking about with the Department of Health. While right now there is CDC guidance and Rhino guidance that talks about regardless of the transmission rates, and they're looking at the state. We're also looking at the rates in our district. Right now, Richmond is the lowest in the state and at a low to moderate rate. Hopkinton is the highest for our 3 towns, and Charlestown is right in the middle. Our cases are, and they fall just above in moderate. So they just hit moderate out of 12 to 15 cases. The Department of Health has not updated that data since the last week of July, and there were almost no cases for the month of July. They have asked us to really think about, like you said, our local data. We had 2 events happening that they have asked us to keep our eye on, which was the Charlestown Seafood Festival and the upcoming Washington County Fair, so, because that could shift our data. So it definitely is something that we're taking into consideration. Our thinking is that similar to last year, if you remember the letters that went out when we had a COVID case, we would tell you the school that it happened at, how many, and we would let you know that the close contacts were being notified. And we would sometimes know if you're in elementary school that we were moving a classroom to distance learning, as an example. Our expectation right now, and again, I see right now in our current state, would be that we would use a similar format in that letter. And something like, Charleston School has 3 cases. While we look to mitigate spread, we're going to ask that masks come on starting tomorrow while we contact trace and work. So it could be school by school, it could be district. And again, we're working with Dr. Manlove, who's our district physician. We were on a call this morning. Ride gave us a new template. We met with all the with Ride, and the superintendent Thursday afternoon to go over the new back-to-school planning session, to have those conversations. We had the governor's press conference today at 2. We were not given additional information to see if there was any shift in that guidance. We met as a district team this morning with our nurses and admins, and then right after that with our back-to-school planning team, which is about 60 individuals that incorporates parents, students, school improvement team members, admins, teachers, support professionals. So that's what we're looking at right now. We're not ready to say exactly what's going to happen on day one because we're monitoring our local data. And we're not looking at this point to put in a requirement based on what we're seeing.
Mr. Stahl, and then Mr. Stahl, please, you have the floor.
So I wanted to address the point that was made by a parent about the medical exemptions. There is something confusing in this policy, and I read it and it confused me, and I didn't remember it from when I read it this morning until his comment. On page 2, in the third bullet point from the bottom, we have the section, and that's including the one that's crossed out because we've changed it. It says it's regarding the buses that masks need to be worn on the buses by everyone per federal mandate. It says mask face coverings are required to be worn by everyone on the bus during school bus transportation by federal order unless guidance is updated and provided by the district. CDC guidelines state that a mask may not be worn for the following reasons. 1, no one under the age of 2 should wear a mask. 2, if it would medically compromise. And 3, developmentally delayed population if they are unable to remove a mask themselves. Then the next sentence says, a physician's note cannot excuse mask wearing. However, it can indicate the condition, disability, and the impact it would have on the individual. So for me, reading that, and I think for any parent who's concerned about a medical exemption, there's a confusion, and if not a contradiction there, that if it would medically compromise is a reason for exemption from the federal mandate. But then to have the 2 sentences later say a physician's note cannot excuse one from mask wearing. So I don't know how you can determine that it would medically compromise and honor that if a physician's note is not sufficient. So I find that perplexing and troubling about the policy. I don't like that piece. Maybe Mrs. Picard, you can give some clarification on what that means or how we interpret that. Because if I was a parent, I would certainly be confused by that part. And while I have the floor, I'd just like to say my other personal opinion on this, not relating to the parents' comment, but I would advocate for schools where everywhere in the district for the entire year, masks are entirely optional for everyone. I know that I'm not going to win on that. No one ever agrees with me. That's wonderful. No, I understand why that's difficult, but I advocate for that. But I want to be sure what I'm going to be watching for as a parent, and what I know other parents are going to be watching for, is that when we adopt this policy saying it's strongly recommended, that students aren't feeling pressure or coercion by staff members or teachers or other students. That's very important to me. This is our policy that we're only recommending that when my children go to school without their masks and choose not to wear them, that there's not coercion or stress or pressure put on them, especially by staff or adults in the building.
So the language that you see at the end actually comes from our Department of Health, and it was in last year's guidance as well, and it was because of just a simple note, my child cannot wear a mask. And it was to ensure that we did our due diligence, that people were not just utilizing a blanket note, and that we understood what the need was so we could make an appropriate accommodation.
Mr. Ligori?
Well, my comment was similar. A physician's note doesn't necessarily imply someone's medically compromised. They're two potentially distinctly different things. So a physician could, in theory, just write a note saying, child should not wear a mask. That doesn't provide a medically compromised reason. So they are, in fact, quite different in my opinion.
Any other questions? Yes, please.
So just to address what you just said, I furnished,
Yes,
Cassie Rabbit, I'm so sorry, from Ashaway. I did furnish a note from my son's cardiologist and his primary care doctor and they were both denied. And it specifically said that it would be harmful for him to wear a mask, so I just wanted you to maybe keep that in mind. We did pull my son out and homeschool him for that reason. And I just want to offer some information. This is actually can be found on the CDC website. It's just released by the Biden administration. So according to the American Conference of Governmental Industrial Hygienists, otherwise known as ACGIH, according to their newly released study, an infected person can infect an uninfected person after 27 minutes of both people wearing cloth masks. So, and there's different, I'll be happy to share this little chart with you. Like I said, it's been just released. You can find it on the CDC website. And I just think that it is absolutely ridiculous to allow kids to go 6 hours with maybe a 10-minute break of masks, especially, knowing this information that's just come out. So I just hope you can take that and just, upcoming flu season, I'm sure, is going to come and change a lot of people's minds. But I just hope you keep that in the back of your mind. So thank you so much. I know it's a lot of hard decisions. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Catherine Juicy? I had a question about what would supersede a Chariho policy. So for those of you maybe who haven't read it, our policy right now says strongly recommended, which does not say mandatory. So strongly recommended. So I'm sure there will be parents who will exercise their right to not send their child on a mask. The bus policy, though, is a federal mandate. So from my understanding, it doesn't matter if I like it or not. A kid is going to have a mask on a bus, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I just want everybody to understand that if we pass this policy as it states strongly recommended, it does not mean that there isn't going to come a higher governing body that's not going to come and supersede whatever this policy is. So I just want everybody to understand that our power only goes so far. So whatever we pass tonight, we will certainly have in place at Chariho, but if something comes down from the state level or the federal level, that's going to supersede what our policy is.
And our policy has that clarification, so it's clear. And it also notes that the district can shift based on current numbers and data that we receive. Thank you.
We're always going to do what the state says. Why even have a body? We're always going to do what the state says. Why even have a body?
Sir, if you want to speak, come to the podium, please.
I think what Mr. Stahl said, I don't need to go to the podium. What Mr. Stahl is proposing is realization. He wants to get out in front of
Sir, done. Unless you want to come to the podium and speak, please, because you have to be on audio. Thank you.
Mr. Stahl is proposing something with real leadership behind it when he says, let's make it optional for the entire year, no matter what. We deserve to have freedom of choice in this country, no matter what changes, no matter what the CDC says tomorrow or the next day or the day after that. These people have no more credibility in my eyes. They have no more credibility in a lot of your constituencies' eyes either. You guys will only have credibility in their eyes for as long as you listen to them. Listen to us, okay? We know what's best for our children, period, okay? If you guys are going to mandate us and force us to do things that we don't want to do, we're not going to send our kids to your school. It is going to break down. Understand that. The freedom of choice needs to be protected. It needs to be protected.
Yes, please. Yes, you have to come to the podium, please. State your name. Thank you.
I guess it's more of a question. If parents come to you with doctor's notes, who determines that those should not be fulfilled? That kind of boggles my mind. That, on one hand, a parent comes to you with a an exemption for a child wearing a mask, it's just a mask. It's a thin piece of fabric, and you deny it? A doctor's note? But you're running vaccination clinics in the school, which are supported by doctors. So like, what doctors are we listening to? Just some? I'm having a hard time understanding that parents have brought exemptions to you and you've denied them. That's a real issue. So I would like some information on like one side or the other. If parents are going to bring exemptions from local doctors, are they going to be acknowledged?
So anytime a parent would bring a doctor's note for anything, sometimes we would see them for, my child needs an individual education plan. It doesn't mean they would automatically get an individual education plan. So a team is brought together, led by our special education department, our special ed director, Ms. Durkin, and the principal and the team at the school to review the need of the child to ensure that we can make the appropriate accommodations. Just simply putting it in writing does not automatically give an exemption. And that's a state, and if you had contact the state, that's a process you'll see similar across different districts, or all districts.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Goldie.
Goldie.
Liz from Richmond.
Goldie.
I have a note from my doctor down pat from the Disability Rights Center, if any parent wants to go there. It is against the American with Disabilities Act to make them wear a mask. I wear a face shield mask for my breathing issue. And I still give trouble with my some doctors. But it is against the American with Disabilities Act. And as for doctors' evaluation, you ignored my son's evaluation when he went here. Dr. Limecooler had said he needed an extra year.
Ma'am, could you stay on topic with the, no, it has to be about the mask.
I am. You were just talking about about doctors and
with regards to mask policy.
Dr. Limecooler said my son's case was the most atrocious case in the history of all the schools in all the schools in Rhode Island. So you don't listen to the doctors all the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Day. I know. Mr. Day? Thank you.
I'm trying to follow this conversation as much as I can, but I think we're talking about two different things. And that same page, it says it's strongly recommended by individuals regardless. So a doctor's note would have no impact on that because we're only recommending. But when they get on a school bus, we don't have that choice. And that choice means that if we choose to violate the federal government, the government can come after us in ways that you're not going to like because they will withhold federal money. And if they withhold federal money, that goes back on the individual taxpayers to make up that difference. So we're talking about two different things. During the school day, it's the parent's choice. On a school bus, from 15 to 45 minutes of a bus ride, they don't have a choice. So I don't understand what our big problem is.
See Rabbit, Ashaway. What I'm trying to say, which maybe I didn't make clear, is I'm saying with the idea that we're going to follow CDC, with the idea that we're going to follow Rhode Island Department of Health, RIDE, all these other factors, flu season's coming up, the numbers are expected to go up. In that case, when the policy changes, okay, because it says there you have the right to change policy. When the policy changes to mandated mask wearing, maybe school by school, maybe the district, okay, I get a call saying I have to mask my son at school for the rest of the week. Will you honor his medical or any medical exemption? Because last year, I got an email from Mrs. Picard saying that no medical exemptions would be honored, okay? That if you needed to wear a face shield
which was what was recommended by my son's doctors, you needed to wear a cloth covering under the face shield. So what I'm just bringing that as an example of what happened last year. I'm just hoping that that's not going to happen this year. So on the bus, I don't mean to sound selfish. I don't care what happens on the bus. I'm going to bring my kid to school, drop him off, and pick him up. And it is for 30 minutes, which is within that CDC timeline that the mask will be effective for that half hour. After that, it seems though they're not very effective. So I hope that I clarified that for you, Mr. Day.
And we take it case by case, so I'm happy to look at that case specifically with you and Ms. Tructon together.
Yes, okay.
Mr. Abbott?
Yes, it's my understanding that masks reduce the number of viruses in any given air stream. There's no question about that, it's scientific.
Put your mask on then.
You had it on. It's uncalled for.
But it's just.
That's uncalled for, sir.
You believe it? Put it on.
No, it's fact. It's scientifically proven. Wearing masks reduces the number of viruses in the air.
Anybody else would like to speak? School committee members, discussion or questions? I'm going to take this to a vote. There was a motion and a second to approve this revisions of this face mask policy. Those in favor? Thank you. Those opposed? Abstaining? Recusal? Motion passed. Thank you.
The next policy is the secondary grading policy. This is a revision, and I recommend approval of the revisions to this policy.
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the secondary grading policy. Any discussions or questions with regards to the policy? It doesn't look like it. I'll take that to a vote. Those in favor? Opposed? Abstaining? Recusals? Motion passed. Thank you.
The next policy is the standards for student behavior, the high school and the Chariho Tech revision. I recommend approval of the revisions to this policy.
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the standards for student behavior policy, high school CTC revision. Questions, discussion? Anybody? Mr. Stahl?
I won't restate it all again. For the same reasons earlier, I'd like to ask for the same amendment to this policy for the religious exemption for Saturdays.
Thank you. Second. There's a motion and a second to add the revision for the exemption for religious reasons on Saturday. Those in favor? Thank you. Anybody opposed? Recusal? Abstentions? No, that was unanimous. So now we go back to vote on the policy as amended. Do we need a motion for that? No, we don't. We've already got that, right? Yeah. So, okay. Yes, Mr. Stone.
2 points on this one. One, it has under letter G, under the discipline, the same bias-based. I still have a problem with that terminology. I have a same problem with it because the definition is in this policy that the other one refers to.
Okay.
We've acknowledged that that's vague and subjective. I don't like policies that are vague and subjective. Another issue I have in this policy is under the substance abuse, under the discipline and how they will be disciplined for first, second violations, et cetera. When we get down to the substance abuse section, and we went over this when we did this policy, I guess it was about a year ago. It's letter B, this is on page 8, the top of page 8. Letter B, possession, use, and or under the influence of controlled substance, including unauthorized prescription drugs, drug derivatives, i.e. edibles, natural or synthetic substances, or alcohol under possession, use of paraphernalia. We have the first violation, and then the second and subsequent violations. The first violation for this says possible police contact. I voted no for this policy a year ago because it said possible police contact for possession, use, or being under the influence of illegal drugs and narcotics. That's absurd. It's illegal. And so the idea that we would have a first offense where we would not necessarily contact the police, but that is left up to discretion of the administrators. I lost the battle a year ago, but I will vote no again unless we change that from possible police contact. In fact, just remove the first violation. Treat the first violation the same way as second and subsequent violations. I referred to this with parents and in conversations over the last year since this policy went out that said, you know, all these other offenses and infractions, we first violation contact the police. And that's in the policy, in the protocol without question. But when it comes to illegal drugs and narcotics and someone possessing or being under the influence in the school, we may or may not contact police. And that is absolutely criminal to me. It's wrong, and the school district deserves to be sued if they don't contact the police in that case. So I will vote no for this, so I'm off the hook.
Thank you, Mr. Stahl.
Unless someone wants to amend to change to remove the first violation there.
Ms. Legori and then Ms. Chambers.
Yeah.
Ms. Legori had his hand up and then Donna.
David, I don't disagree with your rationale. However, under B, I don't see where the word illegal is in there.
The word what?
Illegal. You said illegal multiple times, and it says under the influence of controlled substance, including unauthorized prescription drugs, etc. So I'm struggling to see the illegal part.
So the illegal is appreciate the point. It doesn't say illegal. The possession of unauthorized pharmaceuticals or being under the influence of them or alcohol or possession of drug paraphernalia would be illegal for students of school age. So that's not, that word is not there, Gary, but it's certainly a reality. No 21-year-olds in middle school.
Donna Chambers? Donna Chambers.
I was going to suggest amending it because I agree with David that it should not be possibly police contact. I think there's no harm in contacting the police in this situation. So I would recommend amending it. I make a motion to amend or just take out the word possible.
Second.
We have a motion to take out the word possible from the possible contact of the police. Yeah, well, it's a motion to amend. This is an amendment, yes. Thank you. And Donna's.
By taking out the word possible in the
And Donna
infraction.
made the motion and David Stahl seconded. Okay, so I have some hands raised. Mr. Abbott and then Catherine Juicy and then Mr. Day and Mr. Luzon, I'm sorry, you had your hand up earlier.
Would students that are eligible to receive medical marijuana be excluded from this?
If they had an exemption,
Unauthorized.
it wouldn't, we wouldn't be able, they would have it.
Would you ask them for us before you proceed to call the
Typically,
police?
they'd be during the because they have to have due process. There would be an investigation. You'd contact the family, etc. Ask for the documentation.
And that would hopefully come out if they had a legitimate use to use.
Yep, during the investigation, correct. And the police would follow up. And we work very well with the police.
Ms. Luzon, you had your hand raised first. I'll have Ms. Luzon, then Ms. Juicy and Mr. Day. Ms.
I'd
Luzon.
just like to know if John could answer why it's written in this way, because I was.
Sure.
Oh, John's here.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to answer the question, and that is that sometimes there does need to be some discretion for the administration. For example, I have spent countless hours in another school district dealing with a situation involving CBD, which is prohibited by federal law. And I have also federal policies, including in this district, that we are a drug-free school. And I have a parent who sends her elementary child to school with smoothies that have CBD because the parent believes that it is medically helpful for her. In terms of calling the police for something like that, the police have got, bigger things to deal with. DCYF has bigger things to deal with. Therefore, that's an example of why that in all of these policies, there needs to be some discretion for the administration to use common sense. If the administration doesn't have common sense, we should find different administrators.
So can I follow up?
Yes, sir. Go
My
ahead.
wife will attest to this. My hearing's starting to go. I only heard half of what John just said. So could somebody repeat what John just said,
I
please?
think he said he wanted, I think, because as a former administrator, you want the discretion to decide whether or not you need to call the police. And he's saying in some instances, say, for instance, a small child at an elementary level brings edibles, not knowing what he's bringing into school.
Absolutely.
You may not necessarily want to call the police on that because it's not a, it's not an illegal thing. In the investigation, there may be some DCYF and, investigation with parents, there might, something more might come of it. But, you don't want to really call the police on a 6-year-old, for not knowing what he actually or she actually brought to school.
Right, thank you very much, Linda
You're
and
welcome.
John.
Okay. Well, that was a paraphrase, but yes. Ms. Juicy and then Mr. Day.
Yeah, I think John just kind of made the point that I was going to make is I don't want to tie the administrator's hands. I think if there is a first contact, calling the police right away isn't necessarily always the best course of action. So I don't want to take away for our first offense the administrator's right to handle it the way that they think is appropriate.
Mr. Day?
My concern would be that there's got to be consequences of actions that students and adults take, and we need to be assured that the consequences will be handled in a professional manner. So if we start relying on police to come in and solve all of our problems, we're going to be farther down the road to things that the people are objecting to now. So I think we should leave it the way it is.
Thank you, Mr. Day.
Linda, there's,
I'm sorry. Yes, sir, Brian.
Just a couple of clarification. Ryan Bergman, Dean of Students at the high school. Anytime that there is contraband, the way that we dispose of it is to give it to the SRO or the police, so they're automatically notified when there's any physical potential contraband. Where that starts to become sticky is when you have a student that is potentially under the influence. We never really know what they're under the influence, even if we send them via ambulance to the hospital for their safety because we believe that they're under the influence. We never truly know what they're under the influence, quantity, so on and so forth. So to turn around and do we notify the SRO that we had an ambulance and student, depart for possible ingestion of a contraband? Absolutely, we do that as part of our protocols anyway. But to notify the police, we're never 100% sure that the student is under the influence. We'll call in the nurse to do an evaluation, call in parents, call in the ambulance, but to call the police and say somebody's under the influence, that's really subjective. And a parent could then turn around and say, why'd you call the police? My child, why was DCYF called for suspicion of them being under the influence? So that's where it becomes a little bit sticky.
Thank you. Ms. Hopkins?
Hopkins. My comment was very close to his. Maybe that first offense should, just thoughts, call the SRO. I mean, you're still reporting it to a police officer. And some of that, the visual of the police officer taking care of the situation for the child, and in that situation, there is a bit of authority without having to call the police, but you still have that reassurance that an official is there to take care of it. Second offense would be different, but I like that, having some official capacity and the SRO involved. That way the SRO knows these children personally, can speak to them and look out for them during the day. Thank you.
So this is almost word for word with some different voices, the same conversation we had a year ago. And I understand that there's nuance. I understand there's areas where you're not sure if a student is under the influence of a controlled substance. You don't call the police without knowing that. You call an ambulance, they go in an ambulance. But the same thing was said last year, that our protocol is that we would always notify a school resource officer. And I said, then why not write in the policy that we notify police? If that is already the protocol of the process, you're acting like putting this in, that there would be police contact. It already says there would be possible police contact. So you're leaving the discretion here for the administrator to possibly contact the police. My issue is, again, when policies are vague or subjective, and you say sometimes we may call the police. I'm not saying that this would happen, but I'm saying it leaves the opportunity then for somebody to have a case that is very similar, very cut and dry, that this person has drug paraphernalia. But we're going to not call the police because we know this kid, or this is a good kid, or this is my friend's kid. So that would be the problem for me. I'm not suggesting that for vague, unknown medical circumstances, everyone just calls the police. That's not, nor would I expect that. For issues where it's pretty cut and dry, or you know what's going on, I don't understand why other things, say possible police contact, that seem minor, then those that seem maybe less threatening, like a gambling violation, says police contact, not possible. Video voyeurism says police contact. I don't understand why we would pick this issue to say we reserve the right to not call the police because of this illegal activity. I won't go for it unless we amend it.
There was a motion by Donna to amend the policy to exclude the word possible. Am I correct on that, Donna?
Yeah.
Seconded by Mr. Stahl. I'll bring that to a vote. Those who want to.
Can you just repeat?
Yeah. Could you repeat how? Thank you. Okay. So that's what we're voting on now, the amendment. Those in favor? Those against? Okay. Any recusals or abstentions? So that the amendment failed. So we move to the original motion to approve the policy as recommended. Any other conversation on that? Nope. Okay, those in favor? Those opposed? Abstentions or recusal? That motion also passed. Thank you very much. We're on G.
The next item on the agenda is standards for student behavior, the Chariho Alternative Learning Academy revision, and I recommend approval of the revision to this policy.
So moved.
There's a motion and a second to approve the standards for student behavior for the Chariho Alternative Learning Academy. Any questions or comments with regards to this policy? No? Anybody? No? Mr. Stahl, you have a question or comment?
Thank you, Chair. Letter
You're welcome.
F, let me find the page for you.
What are you referring to, please?
He's looking for the page,
Letter
letter
F,
F.
I'm trying to find a page number for you.
Oh, maybe it might just be.
Do you remember which area, Mr. Stahl, that it was?
Yes, it's under the, it's regarding the matter of restorative practice and discipline. Okay,
Yeah. G, right, is it G?
okay.
G.
So, right at the top of the policy then, under behavioral standards in the overview, we've added this paragraph. The restorative practice will be used at CALA in lieu of or in conjunction with consequences of the behavior code. Restorative practice is a strategy that seeks to repair relationships that have been damaged by violations of the behavior code. Restorative practice represents a positive step forward in helping all students learn to resolve disagreements, take ownership of their behavior, and engage in acts of empathy and forgiveness. This course of action can empower students to learn from unacceptable choices, to understand their impact, and to grow personally in their ability to make sound decisions and resolve problems. The benefits of restorative practice also include building respectful relationships, providing the opportunity for equitable dialogue and decision-making involving all stakeholders, and encouraging the need to take responsibility for inappropriate actions. I think all of those words sound nice to me in terms of, damaging relationships and helping students learn to resolve things, taking ownership of behavior, empathy, forgiveness. Those are all things that I teach in counseling and have taught in education. They make sense to me. I understand that. What I don't love is the very first sentence says that this practice, this is a new practice, the restorative practice, will be used in lieu of or in conjunction with consequences of the behavior code. So essentially, we have a whole behavior code that says if you commit this sort of offense, you have this sort of consequence. And it's very specific, just like all the others, with first offense, second, third, subsequent violations. Very specifically defines what the incidents were, very specifically defines what the disciplinary actions would be. And this first sentence, in my opinion, undermines all of that and makes that very confusing, and again, very vague and very subjective, because it says sometimes when there is a particular infraction or a particular bad behavior, sometimes there will be a consequence as outlined by our policy, and you know exactly what that consequence is, but sometimes there may not be, because sometimes we may just use this restorative practice and talk about it, and we may not use the discipline code that we have. So why do we have a discipline code if we're going to undermine it or only use it some of the time? And again, when it's subjective, it's going to lead to a lot of problems. I'd hate to be an administrator in this context and have one parent say, last week, my child committed this offense and they were given these consequences according to the behavior code. Today, another child committed that offense and the restorative practice was used to talk about repairing relationships, and there was no discipline for the conduct. So I have an issue with that because it's vague. I have an issue with that because it's sometimes and it's subjective. I also have an issue with it in general. I think, it's been talked about that CALA can be a tough environment. And I'm a fan of clear discipline and consequences and clear cause and effect, and having some real boundaries and parameters for the good of the body, as well as the good of the individuals. So I think it undermines good, consistent discipline, and I think it's too vague. So I don't like this whole section on restorative practice. And would vote no if it's presented as stands.
Any other comments for Mr. Callahan?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a question for Dave. Is your opposition the in lieu of portion of it only, or is it the entire paragraph?
It's that it says it will be used in lieu of or in conjunction with.
Right.
So we have no idea. If we throw out the whole discipline code and say, we're just going to use restorative practice.
Right, yeah, no,
That's
I got it. So if in lieu of, and the word or was removed, then you'd be okay with this?
If it said restorative practice will be used at CALA in addition to the consequences of the behavior code, I would have no issue.
Okay, that's good. That's what I wanted to understand. A second question then is, how would restorative practice be used in lieu of the behavior code?
I can answer that.
I get almost scared in my head.
Go ahead, John. Please.
Can I speak?
Yes, please.
Yeah, very simply, the students at CALA who are there because of having mental health disabilities. And as a result of them having mental health disabilities, if their team determines that their conduct is a product of their disability, under federal law, you can't impose discipline. But on the other hand, you can do something to address the situation by using restorative justice. If you do not like that, I encourage you to contact the federal government, but that has been federal law for 25 years now. Again, for kids who have disabilities where they have limitations in terms of their ability to control certain types of behavior.
Thanks, John. I appreciate that. That clears it up for me.
Sure, and I'll give you an example, a very specific example. I grew up with a student, with a man who had Tourette's syndrome. His Tourette's syndrome manifested himself by saying a very vulgar word that I'm not going to say, and it would have been wholly inappropriate to discipline him for using that word because he could not control his use of that word. On the other hand, it would be perfectly appropriate to try to teach him to say, I'm sorry, after the word came out of his mouth. But because of this Tourette's, he couldn't control it. And we have kids with Tourette's.
Understood. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Stahl?
Yeah, John, thank you. That makes perfect sense to me, and I understand that. And I think that's the environment of Kella, and understanding all of the needs and all of the disabilities and all of the situations that go along with it. I think my question then is, what does that mean for the rest of the discipline code? Because we still have here 10 pages of discipline code that talks about all sorts of violations. And some of them would include the exact things that you've referred to as examples, John, or things similar to them. Vulgarity or behavior that someone perceived as threatening, or refusal to follow directions. We have a code of conduct, and then we have first violation, second violation, all violations, subsequent violations, and discipline. Is that not all federally illegal?
No, it's not illegal at all, because under federal law, we have to look at children with disabilities on an individualized basis. So again, if I use that vulgarity over and over again during this meeting, it would be totally inappropriate. It would be totally appropriate for the chair to call me out of order. On the other hand, if I use that vulgarity because I have Tourette's, it would not be. So again, this is a situation where it affords the administration the ability to address situations on an individualized basis, which is particularly an issue at CALA based on the population that it serves.
So,
yes.
The concern that Mr. Stahl has raised comes up from time to time in school-based situations. For example, a school wishes to suspend a student who, two students who are involved in a fight. One student has a disability, one student doesn't have a disability. Federal law makes it very clear that we cannot suspend a student with a disability beyond 10 days, whereas the federal law, state law is more flexible in those situations for kids who don't have disabilities. It's a question of what the federal government has put in the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act.
Mr. Stahl?
yeah, so again, very helpful clarification. The policy as it's written doesn't tell me all of that, doesn't give us that explanation. So I'm gonna wait for Donna or Ryan to have a brilliant rewording. But if it said in lieu of or in conjunction with consequences of the behavior code, with some sort of wording about with individual application based on need, disability, etc., individual factors, whatever the case may be, I just read, and I understand everything you're saying, John. I just read the policy as not being that specific to tell me that. If I read the policy, it just looks like sort of on a whim or in a very subjective way, someone could decide today we'll just use restorative practice. Tomorrow, we'll go to the code. So I'd love it if it was somehow more specific to explain that based on individual need, based on individual something. Perhaps John has wording that could clarify that.
With regard to your suggestion, I don't think that your suggestion changes the circumstances at all, because somebody will say, well, I don't know what individual need means. Again, all of this is laid out in federal and state law in the special ed regulations. That if it's a manifestation of a child's disability, we are not allowed to use a child's disability against them to punish them for having a disability.
Mr. Stahl, if you look at the first paragraph, the overview, it does state that it's an educational facility designed to meet the unique individual needs of students requiring both clinical and alternative educational settings. So it sort of does address the fact that these students are unique individuals, unique learners, and require a different approach.
Yeah, I understand that. My point is simply, John's up here with federal and state law, and we have a school population, and we're in between somewhere trying to make policies that accommodate everything and that make sense. I just wish it was worded in a way that helped do that.
Okay, so right now we have the policy as it stands. There's been no changes or amendments, so I would bring this to a vote. Those in favor of, no, I'm done. We're done. We're done. You already have, and we're moving on.
No.
This one. Okay. You don't have to apologize.
No. Holly Hopkins.
We have this covered in IEPs. I can speak from experience. My son has an IEP. There was an infraction. Mr. Zenyan wanted to suspend him, and he couldn't because it's on his IEP. So we work together, just so I know what I'm talking about. Do any of you know what restorative justice is and restorative practices? I've been reading a lot about this from both sides. I have a really good document that I'll send to you guys after this. It's a promotional, all the good things about restorative practices and restorative justice. But as I was reading through it, it's an instruction manual to start in schools in policy changes, which I'm seeing here. And as I read more about restorative practices and restorative justice, it's a whole curriculum, training, a lot of money, and they recommend taking all of the money from Title I and putting it into restorative practices in school. This is a lot more than just a policy change. This is opening a door to a social emotional learning curriculum in the Cala School.
From my experience, Ms. Hopkins, is we have a Cala CAB, it's called, and I'm on that committee. And there's a grant, it's a CSIP grant that was approved by the state of Rhode Island that we have the monies to be able to put this restorative practice in.
How long is that grant determination for, if I may ask?
Right now, it's until they get out of status with the state.
Right.
Can I ask how much that grant is?
Yeah, we know. It was,
I don't know off the top of my head, it's a couple $100,000.
Right.
Okay, for instance, I do have some figures. LA Unified School and all the restorative justice programs that I've read about are inner city. So it kind of doesn't fit here. I understand where the Cala School sits. My son was in that school for quite a while and is now in the middle school. I'm very aware of it. I like what they're selling, but when you look at the details and you find out that these programs have no empirical data, they're not showing any improvement. The very first year they're implemented in schools, math scores went down 14% because.
Okay, so this is, you're sort of out of order, but to answer you, Ms. Hopkins, to be able to implement the CSIP, to be able to use the money for the CSIP, we had to show that these were vetted and interventions that were what they call tier 1 and tier 2, which are that they have research behind them.
Evidence-based.
They have their evidence-based. Thank you. I was looking for the right word.
So
Could
I request that we table this discussion and have a more formal discussion
No, you
about
can't make that request.
this bigger issue?
Only a school committee member can make that. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Husan.
I guess I've been dismissed.
Mrs. Hopkins? We can request at any time, any policy to be discussed in a future agenda item if we're not happy with what's happening with that policy.
Yeah.
So if we approve it, which I suspect we're going to be approving this, that doesn't mean a month from now, a year from now, we can't have a discussion about this again if it's not fulfilling what we expect it to do.
My concern is you're changing the verbiage in the policy to accept this terminology without fully knowing all of the meat behind what restorative justice is and how it's implemented in schools. So, for instance, really quickly, LA Unified is a huge school. They spend $2.5 million every year on restorative practice.
Point of order. Thank you.
So it's a continual amount, an allotment of money.
Thank you for your input.
And it concerns the taxpayers of this community to know what those monies are being spent on. Grant or not.
Point of order usually means cease and desist.
Yes, grant or not.
I'm sorry, Mr. Abbott and then Ms. Chambers.
No, I just really want to move the question.
I was gonna ask a
Yeah,
question.
Mr. Abbott has a quick
Okay.
question. No, I'm not.
No,
No, we're
What do
moving.
you
we're-
do with the bullying every day? You just slap them on the wrist?
Ma'am, you're out of order for this.
And how about the drugs going to the school?
Madam
You just
Chair.
slap them on
Thank you, Mr. Day. Okay, Mr. Abbott has a question, and then we're moving this to a vote. Thank you.
Just so I understand this a little better. Is this being done to comply with the federal policy or procedures in any way?
No. This was, my understanding is, was part of the comprehensive school improvement plan. The community advisory board worked with the teachers and the school to be able to implement, what was necessary to be able to move the school out of status, which is part of, they're in there because of graduation rate. But this was vetted through the Department of Education because their plan has to be approved through RIDE.
Okay, and the feds don't have anything to do with it?
The federal government gives the funding for the CSIP monies.
That's my point. I mean, they give us very little money, but they swing a lot of weight in terms of our policies and plans. That's the point that I'd like to make.
Thank you, Mr. Abbott. Okay, I'd like to move this to a vote. Those in favor of accepting the standards of student behavior, Chariho Alternative Learning Academy policy as is, those approved. Those against? Mr. Stahl, recusal or abstention? Abstention, Mr. Day? I'm sorry, Mr. Day?
Donna doesn't know who voted. Did you get Bill's vote?
It's it's opposed. I'm sorry, Mr. Day. I'm sorry. Okay, misunderstood. Okay, we're on to H. Thank
Okay,
you.
substitute rate of pay during COVID-19. This is a deletion. I recommend deletion of the policy, which was put in effect during the beginning of the pandemic year.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, there was a motion and a second to delete the substitute rate of pay policy during COVID-19. Any discussion on that one? Questions? Yes, Donna?
I just want to ask the superintendent if there is any concern about getting subs, because that's why we initiated this pay raise.
We actually, if you remember, you revised our current sub pay, so we fixed it in the original policy, which is why the additional policy is no longer needed. But to your point, the concern we have is the long-term certified substitutes. We actually have a nice pool right now of the per diem subs, but it's a statewide concern. There's actually a meeting August 18th, and Kristen Merritt will be attending, our human resources administrator, because the problem across the state is certified subs.
Certified, okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, I'll move this to a vote. Those in favor of deleting the substitute rate of pay during COVID-19 policy, those in favor of deleting it? Thank you. Any opposition, abstention, or recusal? Okay, that was unanimous, Donna. Okay, aye.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the harassment policy revision. John did review this policy. The only update needed to be the removal of Jane's name to Michael's.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, so we may have a motion and a second to update the harassment policy to add Dr. Kamella's name to the policy. Yes, yes, Mr.
Who is?
Oh, Dr. Kamela is our new assistant superintendent.
Oh, that's my report.
I know, Welcome, Dr. Kamela.
Thank you.
Dr. Mike. Thank you, Mr. Luzon. Did we vote? No, we didn't. Okay, those in favor? Okay, thank you. Those opposed? Anybody? Abstentions or recusal? Okay, thank you very much. Now we're on to business B, which is.
This is the legal counsel agreement. I recommend approval of the legal counsel agreement between the Chariho Regional School District Committee and Brennan, Recupero, Cashel, Scungio, and McAllister, LLP, from July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
There was a motion and a second to recommend the approval of the legal counsel agreement between the Chariho Regional School District Committee and Brennan, Recupero, Cashel, Scungio, and McAllister, LLP, from July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022. I open for discussion or questions at this point. Mr. Stahl?
I'll vote no. It will not be a shocker. I was not amused or impressed with the mocking and poor legal opinion when I asked for one regarding yoga and mindfulness in the schools, or Mr. Anderson's approach to several other issues we've discussed. So I vote no.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? No? Okay, I'll take it to a vote. Those in favor of recommending the approval of the legal counsel agreement? Thank you. Those
Wholeheartedly from this end of the table.
Those opposed? Mr. Stahl, thank you.
Also on this end of the table.
Abstentions or recusals? None there. Okay, the motion passed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome, John.
Thanks, John.
Okay, so here's the annual
Thank you.
report.
I recommend approval of our 2020-2021 district annual report, and it goes without saying, but I'm going to say it. Donna Siskavich and Katie Karakosian were instrumental in putting this together every year.
Katie on?
I don't know if this is live stream.
Yeah, that's true.
But just the
Thank
amount
you,
of
Katie.
effort, the time, and the thoughtfulness that goes into this, it's greatly appreciated, and thank you for that.
Okay, so there was a recommendation to approve the district annual report.
So
Second.
moved it, right?
Oh, we moved it in
Yeah.
second? Okay, thank you. Any comments or, no?
Applaud
No.
again?
Yes?
Just
yes.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, lots of
Beautiful
work.
report.
I love the format, Donna. I don't know, yeah, okay. Well, I just like the way the individual schools, it was something that I wanted to, kind of notice is that, the highlights and then the goals for the upcoming year. It's just really, it's very appealing and to the eye and stuff. I don't know if she's here, so. Oh, there she is. Thank you, Katie, for all your work.
Katie.
That was awesome. Oh, and I also like the way you included the bus and the charwows. I thought that was nice too, as a good way to point out those people that work,
Turned it off.
Right, exactly. So that was awesome. Okay. So now there's a recommendation to approve the 2021 district annual report. Those in favor? Wholeheartedly? How do they say? And those against or opposed? Any abstentions or recusals? That was a unanimous vote. Thank you so much. Thank you, Katie, and thank you, Donna, for all this awesome work.
It's up there.
Okay, now are you up there?
I don't know.
Okay.
So the presentation wasn't in your packet, and full disclosure, we had our meeting with RIDE Thursday afternoon, and we met as a district this morning. There was no school yesterday, so, but I'm going to talk through and happy to stop. And
Do you want them to move if they?
If you want us to see the presentation.
If you want to see the presentation.
Is it up, Sean? Eric?
They leave us? He's in the booth. Oh, there he is. Okay.
Are we supposed to look at the screen?
You could, if you want to move. It makes it easier,
Yeah.
make it easier. So she, like I said, my apologies, we,
She has a
timing.
presentation first.
And then the governor's press conference at 2, we weren't sure if we needed to make any updates. Okay, great. Okay, so for all schools, and this is a draft, the plan to ride needs to be completed and on our website by August 27th. And like I said, districts just received the template and guidance and the input with Chariho and the Department of Ed to be able to understand the questions necessary. So basic information that it's important to know is we're starting school September 2nd. It is a full in-person learning schedule for all students pre-K through 12. Like I said, it will be posted on our website August 27th, the finalized draft. It will need to be updated per federal guidance every 6 months. It will be attached to our ESSER 3 funds. However, I'm very proud to say as a district, we did this monthly, so our plan was in a very good place. And just another point of context, our district, we created a frequently asked question document. When we put out a survey with our August E update, we have been gathering questions from our community, parents, students, and as we get those, we update that FAQ. So if you have a question and you don't see it answered, please feel free to let me know, and we're happy to add that. So I think actually Ms. Dinsmore went over this data a little bit. I don't know if she's still here, but I thought it was important to share the data from last school year. And just to be clear, this data incorporates all students and staff. So students, even if they were full distance learners, home instruction, they were attached somehow to the district, they're incorporated in these numbers. This is information that was on the link as our reopening plan. Last year, we shared it with all our families multiple times. So it just gives you perspective about what our rates look like. As you see, we were, well, some days it felt like we had a lot of tracing to do. Our cases were not as high as many other districts. We did a lot of work, and that was thanks to the community support, our admins, our teachers, and our students all complying with our mitigation and prevention strategies. Some of the questions parents have asked is our screening. Will I have to do that daily self-check every day? You will have to do it at your home, but you will not have to do it on PowerSchool every day. There will be a one-time self-attestation form for all staff and students that is embedded in PowerSchool, and it's a one-time form that says you understand that we're asking you to check for symptoms daily. So that's a one-time sign-off, and that was a shift from RIDE's guidance in the pre-K through 12 guidance. If a family cannot get onto PowerSchool, they would just contact their school clerical staff or admin, and they can support them and walk them through how to do that. And if they need a further assistance for a technical glitch, IT is always there to help. And then we're just, again, we had the same COVID symptoms noted in our attendance policy, and we're asking anyone with 2 or more symptoms to remain home per the guidance. So this is just a table that shows the current prevention strategies, many we did last year as well. We asked to do the screening every day prior to coming to work or school. We have physical distancing for students who are not eligible to be vaccinated. That's our 11 and under population. We have a policy that strongly recommends face coverings regardless of vaccination status. We have HEPA filters in every one of our classrooms. We are continuing with our school-based testing when possible. That is parental consent. That doesn't happen without consent from parents. We have our cleaning, disinfecting, and hand washing hygiene that will remain in place just as it was last year. We continue to promote vaccinations per the state requirement. That is part of our plan, and we were asked to hold a vaccination clinic in August in coordination with our town EMAs, and that is happening Monday, August 16th. And that email went out to families today. We are utilizing outdoor spaces whenever possible, and we invested in outdoor Wi-Fi using our Take It Outside grant last year. So that was funded through that. And we are continuing with stable pods per the pre-K through 12 guidance in K to 8. So the other highlight that parents wanted to double check was the quarantine plan. We are sticking with the 7 days from the last day they were in contact, which means that on day 5, at the earliest, we would ask our students to be tested and then return on day 8 and then monitor for symptoms.
And this quarantine plan will be the same for our travel. You just deleted tonight the policy that had the 14-day travel policy embedded. So now it provides the district with the flexibility to use the same guidance we've been using for close contacts. The other question parents have is about vaccination. If a child or staff is vaccinated, they do not need to quarantine as long as they are asymptomatic. So if they're symptomatic, they should stay home and get a test. And if they are asymptomatic, even if that household member is the one with COVID, you would still not need to quarantine if vaccinated. And this just goes over the same thing. And right now, this is right out of the playbook from the Department of Health, which explains what does it mean to be fully vaccinated, and that anybody who's identified as a close contact does not need to quarantine. Transportation does have a federal order, as we discussed when we discussed mask policy, so that's required. Buses can be at 100% capacity. All students, again, we're reminding them to be at their bus stop 5 minutes before scheduled arrival. They will have assigned seats. They will be asked to wear their masks at all times, and they may ride only their assigned bus and must not get on and off at different stops every day. That was also in our pre-K through 12 guidance. So those are the big highlights. Those were the topics of conversation many of our families were looking to have. But we continue to work on the plan. Like I said, we met with our district-wide team this morning and continue to meet with them to talk through and prepare our finalized plan, which we posted. I think it will be posted earlier than August 27th because we're really in a very good place.
And that will be posted on our website.
Correct.
Okay.
And I'll send out an email when that happens so people, our families and community know that it's there.
Any questions? Ms. Hopkins? Yes, come to the podium, please. There's no vote on this, right? Not yet.
I may have missed it. Is there any leniency with the absences since parents are making calls if their kids are feeling ill?
COVID, for the COVID symptoms, yes, it still has it as an excused absence.
Yeah. Okay. I guess we're at the consent agenda items. How are we doing on time? Oh, good. Yeah, pretty good. Okay. So anything that needs to be pulled from consent agenda items?
A1, 2, and 3.
A1, 2, and 3 will be pulled and voted on. Any other things that need to be pulled from consent agenda items?
Are you ready?
Yes, sir. I gathered. Yes.
Madam Chair, I make a
Yes.
motion to move the remainder, but before I do, I would like to recognize a donation from Staples and Wesley for $4,009.28 for our miscellaneous supplies, which they do give us, which I don't have it in front of me, I should have, a lot of stuff. So, here's my motion.
Very good. Thank you, Staples.
Second.
Second motion. The motion to move, no, what am I doing? It's consent, to vote on the consent agenda items. Those in favor? Thank you. All those opposed? Abstention or recusal? Okay.
All right, Madam Chairman, I try to do this quick so we
Yes.
beat 10 o'clock.
Yes, sir.
At this time, I make a motion to approve A1 executive session minutes of July 13th, 2021, approval of executive session minutes of June 22nd, 2021, minutes not sealed.
Second. There was a motion and a second to approve the minutes, the executive session minutes of July 13th, 2021, approval of executive session minutes of June 22, 2021, minutes not sealed. Those in favor, any discussion on those minutes? No? Those in favor to approve the minutes? Those opposed? Abstentions? Okay, that's Ryan, and Mr. Abbott was abstaining.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve A2 executive session minutes of July 13th, 2021, NEA Chariho contract tentative agreement, unsealed July 13th, 2021.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to approve the executive session minutes of July 13th, 2021, NEA Chariho contract tentative agreement, unsealed July 13th, 2021. Any discussion or questions on this matter? These minutes? I'll take a vote. Those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Abstentions? And recusals? So one abstention.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I make a motion to approve A3, regular session minutes of July 13th, 2021, page 10 revised to include Linda McAllister's vote.
There's been a motion and a second to approve the regular session minutes for July 13th, 2021, including Ms. McAllister's vote. Any discussion on that? Questions? No. Those in favor? Those opposed? Abstentions? Mr. Callahan's abstaining. Any recusals? None. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Now we're on to reports.
So there are no subcommittee reports at this time. And for my report, we have a few things. Appointment of our Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Michael Camella, who just completed his first week as of tonight. Dr. Camella comes to us with well-rounded experiences through his 29 years in education. He began his career as a middle school mathematics teacher. His experiences have involved many levels of school leadership, administration, supervision, curriculum, finance, and technology at both school and district levels. He's a graduate of the National Institute of School Leadership and the National Superintendent's Academy, two very rigorous programs designed to develop and grow leaders, as well as receiving his doctorate in educational leadership. He has an extensive background in curriculum design and implementation, as well as instructional coaching with both teachers and leaders, and he comes to us with glowing recommendations and will be greatly missed by his community and his colleagues. We are very excited to have Dr. Camella as part of the Chariho team. For our kindergarten registrations, our updates are as follows. We have 37 registered at Ashway, 65 students at Charlestown, 36 students at Hope Valley, and 82 at Richmond. And as I know you're all aware, we will typically receive this up to the very last day before school begins.
Thank you.
We are monitoring the numbers closely.
Yes.
The flu clinics have been finalized and will be posted in our September e-update. They are taking place in the month of October, and the finalized dates will be in that update. And our upcoming events is our new teacher orientation on August 26th, recently added as our vaccination clinic, open to all community members, staff, students, family, etc. On August 30th, staff convocation is building-based. On August 31st, we have fifth grade open house and welcome nights at 6 to 8 p.m. We have district PD days on August 31st and September 1st. On September 2nd, students will report for the first day of school. And September 6th and September 7th, we have no school for staff and students on the 6th, and no school for staff and students, staff for 180 days. And that ends and concludes the reports.
Thank you.
Linda?
Yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Day?
Madam Superintendent, would you like to comment on the COVID vaccination we got coming here on the 16th? I didn't, how did I miss it?
It didn't make the agenda because we just confirmed it today.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, I was looking on the website and I noticed that there was like 90-some spots still open. So, you know, it'd be nice if we do have a little bit of an audience here.
Oh, yeah, August 16th, if you're not vaccinated, please come. We have actually also called EMA, the town, I've notified all of the town managers and they've all posted it to their Facebook pages and websites. But yes, if you want to get vaccinated, you don't have to wait for that clinic, but if you want to come, sign up on the Prep Mod. The link was sent out to all families today.
Can you explain building-based convocation?
Or by buildings?
So it's no
Maybe
more
possibly
all,
buildings.
everybody here?
Probably not this year.
Okay.
Okay. We're on to school committee requests for future agenda items or legal opinions. I'm open to Mr. Abbott, please.
Yes,
Abbott.
I'd like a report from the administration and discussion about where the functions of a facility improvement team end and a building committee is formed. There seems to be a bit of an overlap. It seems to me, especially with this issue regarding the architectural firm, that some of that issue could have been prevented by a building committee. It would have afforded more scrutiny in that particular case.
Okay. So,
And could I add to that?
sure,
We still have a facilities
you're right.
committee?
Yes. There is.
Are we done?
No, I still.
No, I'm just saying that committee.
It hasn't been changed, it still is in
I
existence.
want to know where it overlaps with the building committee, infringes on, issues that might be addressed by a building committee.
Okay.
As per the Chariho Act.
I think the taxpayers have to vote to implement a building committee.
Right, so there's.
There's two different entities.
Right.
Facilities committee.
I know.
The Chariho Act exists as it is, and it calls for establishment of a building.
Could we hold that discussion to the future agenda? Thank
We
you.
shredded the Chariho Act enough, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Abbott. So that would be something for future agenda
Yes.
items. Thank you for discussion. Mr. Stahl, yes.
I have a few agenda items, and I've emailed them to the clerk and the superintendent before we started our meeting. Number one, I would like to discuss removing the community tab and all non-Chariho school district organizations from our Chariho district websites. Number two, I would like to have the two resolutions against critical race theory from the Rhode Island Coalition for Israel and the Hopkinton Republican Town Committee on our agenda, or a discussion about why we won't discuss them. And number three, I would like an analysis of the financial and other impacts of a large-scale student withdrawal for homeschooling. For example, dollar amount lost per student, budget, programming, staffing impacts, etc.
An impact of homeschooling.
I would add that the first one is a redo of a glitch we seem to have in wording, so we couldn't apparently make a legal motion last time. The second is a third meeting looking for that item to be addressed. And the third is a new one.
Thank you, Mr. Stahl. Any other future agenda items? Okay.
That it?
Yep, that's it. Yes, sir, please.
I make motion to adjourn. I second it.
Those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you, we are adjourned. Thank you very much. I took your pen. That's okay. Did you have two? Yeah, well, no, yeah, I have one, but.